All right, listener, ready to hit the racetrack.
Buckle up.
Today, we're diving deep into Heat. Pedal to the metal.
Yeah, a fantastic game.
Gonna break down the core rulebook and see what makes this game such a thrilling ride.
It really captures the intensity of racing. You know, that feeling of pushing your car to the limit
Yeah, absolutely.
and knowing when to hold back.
It's all about risk and reward.
Exactly.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of gameplay,
Sure.
what kind of components are we talking about here? What's in the box?
Well, you start with player mats to track your progress,
Okay.
gear pawns to indicate what gear you're in,
Makes sense.
and of course the game board with different tracks to choose from.
Gotcha.
Each player also gets a race car
Right.
and a deck of cards. Speed cards to determine movement,
Mm-hmm.
starting upgrade cards for a little boost at the beginning,
Okay.
and then those crucial heat cards.
Heat cards.
Yeah.
What are those all about?
Think of them as a resource
Okay.
and a potential problem.
Hmm.
You need them to go fast,
Right.
but too many can cause you to overheat.
Oh, so there's a downside.
Exactly. It's like adrenaline pumping through your engine. You know,
Okay, I see.
it can give you a burst of power, but too much,
Ugh.
and you risk burning out.
I'm starting to see where the strategy comes in.
Yeah.
So how does a typical round of Heat actually work?
Well, the game is played in a series of rounds,
Mm-hmm.
and each round is broken down into 4 steps.
Okay.
First, you decide what gear you want to be in.
Gotcha.
Then you play cards to determine your speed.
Right.
Next, you move your car along the track based on that speed.
Okay.
And finally, you replenish your hand for the next round.
Sounds straightforward enough.
Yeah, but there's more to it than meets the eye.
I bet there is. How does the gear shifting work, for example?
That's where the strategy really comes in.
Okay.
Higher gears let you play more cards.
So that means more speed?
Yeah, potentially you have a chance to really zoom ahead.
Gotcha.
But the higher the gear,
Yeah.
the more strain it puts on your engine.
Yeah.
Think about it like this.
Yeah.
Slamming that gear up to 5 might feel awesome,
I bet.
but it could come back to bite you later on.
Oh, I see.
You got to think about how much heat you can handle.
Right.
Shifting too quickly, like 2 gears at once,
Yeah.
actually costs you heat.
Makes sense.
It's a clever way to make players consider the long-term consequences.
So the game is saying, sure, you can go fast,
Right.
but be prepared to handle the heat.
Exactly. It's not just about winning the race.
No.
It's about winning without blowing up your engine in the process.
Okay, I like that. So after I've chosen my gear, what happens next?
Well, then you get to play those speed cards.
Ah, so that's where I get to put the pedal to the metal.
Right. Your current gear determines how many cards you can play.
So higher gear, more cards, more potential speed.
Exactly. But there's a twist.
Oh.
You play those cards face down.
Really?
Yeah. Nobody knows what you're going to do until everyone reveals their hand.
Oh, that's cool.
It's like a poker game on wheels.
Yeah, that has a layer of suspense, for sure.
You're trying to anticipate what your opponents are going to do.
Right.
Are they going to push their luck or play it safe?
So it's mind games as well as racing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then comes the big reveal.
We all flip our cards and see who goes where.
Yeah, you add up the values on your speed cards.
Okay.
And that's how many spaces you move your car.
Makes sense.
But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Oh.
Cars can actually pass through each other on the track.
Way about pass through each other?
Yep.
That doesn't sound very realistic.
It's a way to represent the maneuvering, the jostling for position.
Okay. I guess that makes sense.
It's not just a simple roll and move game.
I see.
You're always thinking about where your opponents are,
Right.
how they might move,
Yeah.
and how you can get the best position.
So there's a lot more spatial strategy involved than I initially thought.
Absolutely. And sometimes even the best laid plans can go wrong
How?
because of those stress cards you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah. Those sound like they could really shake things up.
Imagine this.
Okay.
You've got a great hand of cards.
Yeah.
You're feeling confident.
Mm-hmm.
You're about to make a big move.
And then,
Bam. You draw a stress card.
what does that mean? Like I have to take a pit stop or something?
Not quite, but almost as bad.
Oh,
You basically have a moment of, concentration lapse.
right.
You have to keep drawing cards until you get a speed card.
So it's totally random.
It adds an element of randomness for sure.
And that could really mess with your strategy.
It can, yeah.
So I could go from speeding ahead to crawling along in an instant.
Or the opposite. You might suddenly shoot forward when you were planning to play it safe.
Okay, this game is full of surprises. I like that.
Keeps things unpredictable.
Definitely. And then there's this thing called adrenaline,
Yeah.
which rewards the player who's in last place.
Right.
Wait, so it's actually advantageous to be the slowest driver sometimes?
Well, in a way, yeah.
How does that work?
The last player to move each round gets an adrenaline boost. They get to add some extra speed to their move.
So it helps them catch up.
And they also get a cooldown action.
We'll have to talk more about those later.
Yeah.
But even trailing behind has its perks.
It does. It adds another layer of strategy,
Yet sometimes being in last place isn't as bad as it seems.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've shifted gears, played our cards, and hopefully avoided any major stress-induced mishaps.
Right.
What comes next?
There are a couple of crucial steps still.
Oh,
Starting with the react step.
okay.
This is where you can activate special abilities.
All right, finally getting to the strategic decisions.
Based on your current gear,
Yeah.
any adrenaline boosts you might have, and even some cards you played.
What kind of abilities are we talking about?
There are two main ones in the core game,
Okay,
cooldown and boost.
gotcha.
Cooldown is all about managing those heat cards.
Ah, that sounds important.
It lets you move those heat cards from your hand
Yeah.
back to your engine.
So I can avoid overheating?
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
essentially cooling things down.
So this is how I prevent my engine from blowing up.
It's about playing the long game,
I see sacrificing some speed now to ensure you can keep going later.
Exactly. And those lower gears, even though they limit your speed,
Yeah.
they actually give you better cooldown options.
Okay, so it's a trade-off.
It's all about finding that sweet spot between speed and engine management.
Like in real racing, you can't just floor it the whole time, right?
Yeah, you have to think about conserving your car's performance over the whole race.
Makes sense. And what about boost?
Boost is all about pushing your luck.
Oh, okay, so the opposite of cooldown.
In a way, yeah, if cooldown is about playing it safe, boost is about taking risks.
I'm intrigued. How does it work?
You pay one heat card
Okay.
to draw a speed card and add that to your movement.
Oh, so you're spending heat to gain more speed.
It's a gamble, for sure.
I bet.
But it can be worth it if you need that extra burst.
To overtake an opponent, maybe?
Exactly, or to make a crucial maneuver.
But there's got to be a downside, right?
There is the added speed from boosts.
Yeah.
Also counts when you're checking your speed against the corner limits.
Corner limits, what are those?
We'll get into that in a bit.
Okay.
But basically, boosting can be risky if you're approaching a tight corner.
You might not be able to handle that extra speed.
Yeah, and end up spinning out.
Makes sense. It's all about calculating those risks.
Precisely. And then there's one more ability we need to talk about.
Okay, what's that?
Slipstream.
That sounds familiar.
This one's all about taking advantage of the other racers on the track.
Oh, so this is like drafting in cycling.
Exactly.
Now this sounds like real racing.
It's all about positioning.
Okay, tell me more.
If you end your movement next to or behind another car, you can choose to slipstream and zoom forward 2 spaces.
So you get free movement, essentially.
It's a fantastic way to gain ground without having to play any additional cards.
It's like those intense moments in Formula One, where
Yeah.
cars are practically glued to each other.
Fighting for the lead.
Exactly. And you said, unlike boosting, slipstreaming doesn't affect your speed when checking those corner limits.
That's right. You get that extra movement without the added risk.
So it's all about using aerodynamics to your advantage.
Yeah,
It really makes you think about the spatial element of the game.
absolutely. It's not just about your individual moves.
Right.
It's about how those moves interact with what your opponents are doing.
Makes sense now. Eventually, even with clever slipstreaming and well-timed boosts,
Yeah,
we're going to have to face those corner limits we talked about.
you are. And that's where things can get really interesting.
Yeah, let's talk corners. What makes those so crucial?
Well, every corner on the track has a speed limit.
Okay.
And if your total speed for the round exceeds that limit,
Uh-oh.
you have to pay heat.
I see. So it's not just about going as fast as you can.
Right.
It's about knowing when to ease off the gas.
Exactly. And approach those corners strategically.
And how much heat do I have to pay?
It depends on how much you exceed the limit,
So the faster I go, the more it costs me.
basically.
Yeah.
And if you push your luck too far,
Yeah.
you might not have enough heat to cover the penalty.
What happens then?
You spin out.
Oh, no.
Yeah, your car slides off the track.
Right.
You're forced to move back.
What?
You have to draw those dreaded stress cards. And you get knocked back down to first gear.
That's a harsh penalty.
It shows how the game emphasizes thoughtful driving.
It's not just about flooring it the whole time.
You have to think about the track, the corner limits,
Right.
and how much heat you can afford to spend.
Okay, so I've navigated the corner, hopefully, without spinning out,
Right.
and I'm ready for the next round. Anything else I need to do?
Well, there are a couple of optional actions you can take.
Oh, like what?
You can discard any cards from your hand that you don't want,
Okay.
except for the stress and heat cards.
Oh, so I can't just get rid of those.
Not so easily.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that keep you on your toes.
Right, they add a little spice to the game.
Exactly. And then the final step is replenishing your hand. You discard the cards you played, draw back up to 7 cards.
Gotcha.
And then the next player takes their turn.
It's a nice cycle of play, you know?
Yeah.
You're constantly making decisions, dealing with the consequences, and preparing for the next challenge.
It's a game that keeps you engaged from start to finish.
Speaking of challenges, we've talked a lot about heat cards,
Yeah.
but we haven't really delved into how they impact the overall strategy.
That's a good point.
So let's talk heat management. It sounds like these cards are at the heart of the game's puzzle.
They are. You remember you use them to boost your speed,
Right.
but they can also clog up your hand and cause you to stall.
So it's a balancing act.
It is, you need them to stay competitive,
Right.
but you have to make sure they don't get out of control.
And the rule book actually calls out a specific situation.
Yeah,
A cluttered hand.
right.
What exactly happens there?
Well, cluttered hand is when you have so many heat cards
Yeah.
that you don't have enough playable cards to meet the requirements of your current gear.
Oh, so I'm basically stuck.
You're stuck with a handful of unusable cards.
It's like showing up to a race with a trunk full of spare tires,
Right.
but no gas pedal.
That's a great analogy.
So what happens when I get a cluttered hand?
You can only play as many cards as you can.
Okay.
And then you have to cover the difference with those useless heat cards.
So I'm wasting them, essentially.
And you don't move your car that turn. You're
Yeah.
forced to shift down to first
When
gear.
miss my turn.
You do. It's a pretty rough penalty.
It really emphasizes the importance of managing those heat cards carefully.
It's a core part of the game's strategy. You know,
Right.
it's not just about racing.
Right.
It's about knowing when to push your engine and when to ease off and cool down.
It's a dance between power and control.
Exactly.
So mastering those heat cards sounds crucial to becoming a skilled heat player.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other tips for heat management?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is learning to anticipate your needs. You know, are you approaching a section of the track with lots of tight corners? You probably want to start cooling down in advance.
To avoid those spin outs.
Exactly. Are you on a straightaway with a chance to overtake an opponent?
That might be the time to burn some heat.
Yeah, unleash your engine's full power.
So it's a lot of forward thinking.
It is. You're not just reacting to the current situation.
Right.
You're planning for what's coming next.
And that's what makes the game so engaging.
It's a constant mental challenge.
Okay, so speaking of challenges, let's talk about winning the game.
Okay.
How do we actually determine a victor in heat? Pedal to the metal.
Well, I mean, the first player to cross the finish line after completing the required number of laps, yeah, they're the winner.
Okay, but what if multiple cars finish in the same round?
Good question. In that case, the winner is the player whose car is furthest ahead.
So it's like a photo finish in real racing.
Yeah. And if 2 cars are side by side, the car closest to the racing line wins.
So even in a tie, there's a clear way to determine the champion.
Exactly.
Any other special rules about crossing the finish line?
A couple of important things to keep in mind.
All right.
Slipstreaming is not allowed on the final lap.
Okay.
And you can't slipstream across the finish line either.
So it all comes down to your own skill in those final moments.
It does no relying on other racers to get you across the line.
It's you and your car.
Exactly.
I like that it really raises the stakes.
And once you cross that finish line, speed limits for corners no longer apply.
So it's a mad dash to the end.
You go as far as your speed allows,
Cool.
and then you can either bask in the glory of victory,
Or analyze what went wrong.
right, and plan for your next race.
Sounds like there's always something to learn and improve upon.
Absolutely. And speaking of learning, remember we talked about the rule book recommending new players start with the core game
Yeah.
before exploring those advanced options.
It seems like a smart way to ease into things.
It is.
But I'm definitely curious about those advanced options. What kind of things can we expect to encounter once we're ready to take our skills to the next level?
Well, the rule book mentions 2 additional modules,
Okay.
the Garage module and the Legends module.
What do those add to the mix?
The Garage module really amps up the customization.
Oh, how so?
It lets you trick out your car with unique upgrades and abilities.
Ooh, okay. Tell me more.
You can fine-tune your engine, improve your handling,
Interesting.
even add special maneuvers.
So it's like building your own custom race car.
It is.
Yeah.
You're not just playing the cards you're dealt.
Right.
You're actually building a car that suits your playstyle.
I see. So I could build a car that's all about speed,
Yeah,
or one that focuses on cornering and heat management.
exactly. It adds a whole new dimension to the game.
It's like those real-life racing teams
Mm-hmm.
who spend hours tweaking and tuning their cars.
To gain that competitive edge.
It's not just about the driver, it's about the machine, too.
Right, and then the Legends module.
Okay, what's that one all about?
This one adds a historical element to the game.
Oh, cool.
It introduces famous race car drivers from history,
Oh, wow.
each with their own special abilities and stats.
So I could race as, like, Ayrton Senna.
Yeah, or Mario Andretti.
That's awesome.
Imagine going head-to-head against those legendary drivers.
Using their unique skills.
Exactly. It adds a whole new level of excitement to the game.
It does. You're not just playing a generic racer.
Right.
You're embodying these icons from motorsport history.
It makes you think about their different approaches.
Yeah.
You know, some were known for their aggressive driving,
Right.
others for their precision and control.
This has really given me a new appreciation for heat, pedals to the metal.
Yeah,
It's clearly not just about speed, it's about strategy,
right.
risk management,
Mhm.
mastering the nuances of your car and the track,
It rewards careful planning.
and quick thinking.
Just like in real racing, there's always a chance for a thrilling comeback.
Or a devastating setback.
You never know what's going to happen next.
That's what makes it so fun.
It keeps you on the edge of your seat.
From the first gear shift to that final checkered flag.
Now, after all this talk about engine management, gear shifting, cornering strategies,
Yeah.
I have a question for you, listener. As you're sitting there picturing yourself behind the wheel of that race car,
Yeah.
what kind of driver do you think you'd be?
Would you be the calculated strategist?
Carefully plotting out each move, managing your heat like a pro,
Or the daredevil pushing your engine to the limit?
risking it all for that burst of speed and
Yeah.
the chance to overtake your opponents?
It's a tough choice.
There's no right or wrong answer, of course.
That's the beauty of heat.
It caters to different playstyles,
You can find your own path to victory.
whether it's through meticulous planning or gutsy maneuvers.
So, listener, if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity,
Yeah,
I encourage you to check out Heat, Pedal to the Metal for yourself.
it's a great game.
Whether you're a seasoned board game enthusiast or just looking for a thrilling new challenge, this game has something for everyone. Start your engines.
And get ready for the ride of your life.
You got it. We'll be back next week for another deep dive into the world of board games.
See you then. If you end your movement right next to or behind another car, you can slipstream
Okay.
and zoom 2 spaces forward.
So it's like getting a little boost from the car in front?
It is. You're using their slipstream to your advantage.
Okay, that makes sense. And unlike boosting,
Right.
you said this doesn't affect your speed when checking those corner limits.
Exactly. You get the extra movement without the added risk.
It's all about positioning.
It is. Yeah. You have to think about where your opponents are
Right.
and how you can use their position to your advantage.
It's not just about individual moves.
It's
It's about how those moves interact with what your opponents are doing.
Exactly.
Now, even with clever slipstreaming and well-timed boosts,
Right.
eventually we're going to have to face those corner limits.
Those quarter limits are where things can get really interesting.
All right, let's talk corners then. What makes those so crucial in Heat?
Well, every corner on the track has a specific speed limit.
Okay.
And if your total speed for the round exceeds that limit,
Uh-oh.
you have to pay heat.
So I can't just go full throttle all the time.
It's not just about going as fast as you can.
It's about knowing when to ease off the gas.
Exactly. You have to approach those corners strategically.
And the amount of heat I have to pay depends on how much I exceeded the limit.
That's right. So if you push your luck too far,
Yeah.
you might not have enough heat to cover the penalty.
And what happens then? Do I get like a time penalty or something?
Where's you spin out?
Oh, no.
Your car slides off the track.
Sounds bad.
It is, you're forced to move back. You have to draw those dreaded stress cards.
Right. Those can really mess you up.
They can. And then on top of all that, you get knocked back down to first gear.
Wow. Talk about a setback.
It really highlights the importance of thoughtful driving.
Right.
It's not just about flooring it the whole time.
Yeah. No, you have to think about those corner limits and how much heat you can afford to spend.
Exactly.
So I've managed to navigate the corner.
Hopefully without spinning out.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
So you're ready for the next round?
Am I good to go, or is there anything else I need to do first?
There are actually a couple of optional actions you can take at this point.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Well, you can discard any cards from your hand that you don't want.
Okay, so I can get rid of cards that aren't useful to me.
Exactly. But you can't discard stress and heat cards.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that keep things interesting.
Right. They're the ones that add a little bit of chaos to the game.
Exactly. And then after that, it's time to replenish my hand for the next round.
That's right. You discard the cards you played, draw back up to 7 cards,
Okay.
and then it's the next player's turn.
It's a nice flow,
And
constantly making decisions and dealing with the consequences.
it's a game that keeps you thinking all the time.
And speaking of thinking, we've talked a lot about those heat cards,
Yeah,
but we haven't really delved into how they impact the overall strategy of the game.
that's a good point. Let's talk heat management.
Okay, because it sounds like these cards are really at the heart of this game's puzzle.
They are, you use those heat cards to boost your speed,
Right.
but they can also clog up your hand
Yeah.
and even cause you to stall.
It's a delicate balance then.
It is. You need those heat cards to stay competitive,
Right.
but you also have to make sure they don't get out of control.
And you mentioned earlier the rule book even has a specific term for that situation.
It does.
A cluttered hand.
Yeah, that's when you have so many heat cards in your hand
Right.
that you don't actually have enough playable cards.
To meet the requirements of my current gear.
Exactly. You're basically stuck with a handful of cards you can't even use.
It's like showing up to a race with a trunk full of spare tires,
Right.
but no gas pedal.
Yeah, that's the perfect analogy.
So what happens if I end up with a cluttered hand?
We can only play as many cards as you can.
Oh.
And then you have to cover the difference with those heat cards.
So I'm essentially wasting them.
You are. And on top of that, you don't even get to move your car that turn.
That's rough.
It is.
Yeah.
You're forced to shift down to first gear, and you miss your turn.
That's a pretty big penalty.
It really emphasizes the importance of managing those heat cards.
It's not just about going fast.
It's not.
It's about knowing when to push your luck and when to play it safe.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance between power and control.
So mastering those heat cards sounds like it's key to becoming a skilled heat player.
This will be part of it, yeah.
Any tips for us when it comes to managing those heat cards effectively?
I think the most important thing is learning to anticipate what's coming up.
Okay.
Are you approaching a section of the track with lots of tight corners?
Right, where I have to be careful with my speed.
Exactly. In that case, you might want to start cooling down in advance.
To avoid those spinouts.
Right. Or maybe you're on a straightaway with a chance to overtake an opponent.
Yeah, that might be the perfect opportunity to burn some heat.
To really unleash your engine's full power.
So it's about looking ahead and planning your moves strategically.
It is. You're not just reacting to what's happening right now.
Right.
You're thinking about what's coming up next.
And that's what makes the game so engaging.
It keeps you on your toes the whole time.
Speaking of engagement, let's talk about winning the game.
Okay.
How do we actually determine a winner in heat? Pedal to the metal.
Well, the first player to cross the finish line, after completing all the required laps,
Yeah.
they're the winner.
But what if multiple cars finish in the same round?
Good question. In that case, the winner is the player whose car is furthest ahead.
Makes sense. It's like a photo finish.
Exactly. And if two cars are side by side,
Yeah.
the car closest to the racing line wins.
So there's always a clear way to determine the winner.
There is even in a tie.
Okay, and are there any special rules when it comes to actually crossing that finish line?
A couple of things to keep in mind. You can't use slipstream on the final lap,
Okay.
and you can't slipstream across the finish line either.
So those last few moments are all about your own skill.
They are. It all comes down to you and your car.
I like that no relying on other racers to get you across the line.
And once you cross that finish line,
Yeah.
the speed limits for corners no longer apply.
So I can just go as fast as I can,
You go as far as your speed allows,
and then I can either celebrate my victory,
or start analyzing what I could have done better.
right, to prepare for the next race.
There's always room for improvement.
Sounds like it now. Speaking of learning and improvement,
Yeah.
remember earlier we were talking about the rule book recommending that new players start with the core game
Right.
before exploring the more advanced options.
Yeah. It's a good way to get a feel for the game.
But I'm definitely curious about those advanced options.
Okay.
What kind of things can we expect to encounter once we're ready to take our heat skills to the next level?
Well, the rulebook mentions 2 additional modules you can add to the game. The Garage module and the Legends module.
What do those add to the mix?
The Garage module lets you really customize your car.
Oh, wow. So
You can add upgrades, improve your handling, even add special maneuvers.
it's like I'm building my own custom race car.
Exactly. You're not just using the basic car anymore. You get to choose how to upgrade it.
I could build a car that's all about speed then, right?
You could, or maybe you want to focus on efficient cornering and heat management.
That sounds cool.
It adds a lot of strategic depth to the game.
It's like those real-life racing teams
Yeah,
who spend countless hours fine-tuning their cars.
right. Trying to gain every little bit of advantage they can.
It's not just about the driver, it's about the machine, too.
Exactly.
And what about the Legends module? What's that one all about?
That one brings in a historical element.
Okay.
It introduces famous race car drivers from throughout history,
Oh, wow.
each with their own unique abilities and stats.
So I could actually race as Ayrton Senna.
You could, or Mario Andretti.
That would be amazing.
It really adds to the immersion.
Yeah, you're not just playing a generic racer. You're stepping into the shoes of these legends.
And it makes you think about their different approaches to racing.
Like some were known for their aggressive style.
Right, and others were more calculated and precise.
I have to say, this deep dive has given me a whole new appreciation for heat. Pedal to the metal.
Me too. It's a fantastic game.
It's not just about speed, it's about strategy, risk management, and mastering those nuances of the track.
It's a game that rewards both careful planning and quick thinking.
Just like real racing.
Exactly. There's always a chance for a comeback or a sudden setback.
You never know what's going to happen.
And that's what keeps it so exciting.
Now, after all this talk about gear shifting and cornering and heat management,
Yeah.
I have to ask you, listener, what kind of driver do you think you'd be?
Would you be the one who meticulously plans every move, managing your heat perfectly?
Or would you be the daredevil pushing your engine to the limit, risking it all for a chance to overtake your opponents?
There's no right or wrong answer. It's all about finding your own style,
And that's the beauty of heat. It lets you find your own path to victory.
whether it's through calculated strategy or bold maneuvers.
So, listener, if you're looking for a thrilling new board game experience,
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking out Heat. Pedal to the metal.
It's a great game.
It's got something for everyone, whether you're a seasoned gamer or a newcomer to the hobby.
Buckle up
Start your engines.
and get ready for a wild ride.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of heat. Pedal to the metal.
See you next time.